What's up, everybody? It's Ross from ChromaticLessons.com. I just wrote a blog post. You know, that's a thing that's very easy to neglect if you own a website and you got a blog part of the website. So I try to write an article every once in a while. And I think it's a way to express myself as a teacher in a different way. I'm forced to use words only. However, the blog post started, if you're reading the title of this video, you know what it is. It's 12 Challenges of Playing Scales in Thirds. And I started this post as just an outline for a YouTube video. And then I thought, you know, I've been posting such boring stuff on the channel lately. Just like harmonica fundamentals and scales. And so I hope to come out with some more like exciting performance videos, or maybe some more blues lessons in different keys on a harmonica. However, I just opted to take a look at this blog post and kind of read you the post and then play the examples. So it's less of a static experience. You could read the blog, but I'm going to use this as a script today. And let's just jump right into it. This whole thing is about playing scales in thirds, and I have been thinking about the interval of a third on the harmonica, either the major third or the minor third. I don't know if you know this, but if you play the interval off a third off of each scale degree in a major scale, you get major thirds and minor thirds. That's major. That's minor. That's minor. That's major. Now, our ear is just like, everything sounds like the C major scale. I don't know what you're talking about, major, minor. But it's a specific fact that these intervals, they don't exactly alternate. There's a major third interval, and then there's two minor thirds, two major thirds, and two more minor thirds as we play the interval of a third off of each scale degree. So I'm going to get into this, but let me just read what I wrote. Playing various scale patterns, instead of just playing linear scales up and down, is important because most melodies we play don't always move up and down scale tones. Now, this is true, and it was really driven home to me as a harmonica student. I've learned a whole lot from my own harmonica methods, I'm telling you. And one of the things that I did was I went through a big harmonica songbook that contains 70 melodies, and I made a course out of it. I demonstrated each of the songs, and then I did another one by the same author. I did 50 Christmas carols. So that's 120 songs, although some of them are repeated. So it's not exactly 120, but it's more than 100 songs that I played. And one of the things in the course, I'm like, let's keep an eye out for portions of the melody that just move using scale tones. As it turns out, that's the easiest part of the song. The tricky part of the song is any interval that's a third or bigger. And then we talk about like learning a specific song and dealing with that interval and kind of isolating it and practicing it. Like if we've got to go from A to D, we just would isolate that. That involves skipping a whole. So, intervals beyond scale tone intervals. So, anyway, I'm going to keep reading. The interval of the third is encountered frequently, and it's important to have under your lips. If you're learning songs, even if you're a jazz player and you're arpeggiating chords, trying to outline a harmony on your harmonica, intervals of a third are super important. I have found that practicing scales and thirds in all keys on the harmonica is actually very challenging. In the process of attempting to do this and making lots of mistakes, I've come up with the following list of 12 observations. Are you ready for the 12? Number 1, you will encounter major and minor thirds off of every chromatic tone. So, I'll read what I wrote. When playing a major scale in thirds off of each scale degree, you are playing both major and minor thirds. True. because we've discussed that there is a certain order of major and minor third intervals as we go up the scale tones and play thirds off of each degree of the scale. If you do this in all keys, you will find yourself repeating a lot of the same intervals. That's true. And you will eventually play major and minor third intervals off of every chromatic tone on the instrument. For 12 tones, this creates 24 combinations. So 12 major third intervals, 12 minor third intervals. That's 24 combinations. Major and minor third intervals are repeated in multiple keys. So an example of a repeated interval is the minor third created by going from D to F. That's this interval right here. Or up an octave. That interval occurs in the major keys of C, F, B flat, and E flat. At some point, if you're playing scales and thirds in any of those four keys, you are going to encounter D to F. So if you play scales and thirds using minor scales, that interval is used in 4 additional keys. So if you were doing scales and thirds in the relative minor keys, that would be 4 different relative minor keys that have D to F. I don't know why that's important, but it's important to realize that this is part of the value. This is why it's important. The value of being familiar with the major and minor thirds is that those intervals are repeated like in 4 different keys. Like you're going to encounter like a weird interval is G to B flat. That is important to know the idiosyncrasy of that interval. And we're going to get to that. But because that's going to show up in the key of F, it's going to show up in the key of B flat. I can't think right now. It would be A flat would have that interval also. G to B flat. And that's like, once you learn, oh, that's the weird minor third interval that has kind of a different way to approach it. Again, I'm holding out for one of the points further down. Might as well understand that interval since it keeps showing up. So, yes, there's new intervals you're learning, but they become recycled. All these major minor thirds. So, that's the repeated phenomenon. Number 3, some of these intervals are easier to play than others on the harmonica. So, let me use my own dialogue rather than what I wrote here and give an example. Easy thirds are any set of 2 notes that form a major or minor third where the notes are next door neighbors, holes in the same breath direction and the same slide position. So the easiest example is the bottom of the harmonica, 2 blow notes C to E. On the same holes, that's holes 1 and 2, play the draw notes. It's a minor third interval. Super easy. It's like both draw notes, both next door neighbor holes, holes 2 and 3 blow. E to G, 2 blow notes, the slide is out. Play that same spot on the harmonica, holes 2 and 3, draw this time. Major third interval of F to A. I'm in this key of C here, just climbing up, playing thirds, the scale in thirds. Then here, we have not so much an easy third. This is G to B. It involves, now the holes are neighbors, but it involves a blow note and a draw note. So, compared to the previous experience, it's a little more challenging. The next one, A to C, the way I play it, I keep the holes together, so I don't skip on up to hole 5 blow. I'll go to hole 4 blow. But again, it's the changing of the breath direction. Draw for A, blow for C. That's not an easy third. But the next one is an easy third. both draw notes, the slide is out. Next door neighbors, super easy. So, the key of C is a good place to start if you want to play scales and thirds. Be aware, though, that you could push the button in and do scales and thirds in D flat and use the same breath patterns that I've indicated in the blog post. Check that out. Scales and thirds in D flat, and it's not any harder than the key of C. So now we're on to point number 4. The sequence of major and minor thirds generated by the major scale should be memorized. I think you should be mentally aware. And I wrote here, your ear will usually tell you if you get one of the intervals wrong. So if you're working out in a certain key and you're trying to do the scales and thirds and you mess up, your ear should pick it out. And you might not even be aware, oh, this is a minor, it's supposed to be a minor third, a major third. For me, when I'm working these out in different keys, if I'm on the second or third degrees of the scale, it's helpful for me to know those are minor thirds, and I have to stop and think, what is a minor third? Am I playing this correctly? So let's see. Your ear will usually tell you if you get one of the intervals wrong, but I do find it helpful to know whether the interval is major or minor. I will use upper and lowercase m's to designate the series of intervals produced by playing thirds off of each degree of the major scale. Lowercase means minor third. And I'm going to edit this and put a line break in here. But basically, the way this goes is the first thing we play is a major third. The next two are minor thirds. So, major third. Those two were minor thirds. Here, G to B. That's a major third off the fifth. And then off the sixth is a minor third, and off the seven is another minor third. So I find it helpful to know that. And generally when I'm playing scales, I don't think of the names of the notes, but if I need to, I will. I don't know if that makes sense. Whenever working on a scale or a scale pattern, the ultimate goal is to get it so that you could do it in your sleep and you don't have to occupy your mind with what's the name of the note and what's the interval. However, in the process of initially learning it, it can be helpful. Try to get in your head that the intervals produced from the second, third, sixth, and seventh degree are all minor thirds. Of course, this order of intervals would completely change if you were to playing one of the minor scales in thirds. That's a distracting point. Maybe I'll take that out of the post. I think the post should focus really on major scales, playing the major scale. I bring it up about 3 times about you could do this on the minor scale. You could play your minor scales in thirds. By the way, have you looked at my minor scales course? 4 different kind of minor scales in 6 keys. You should check it out. Point number 5, choices have to be made regarding options for F, C, and C sharp. Okay, the minor third interval between D and F should be played with the standard draw F, not the slide F. So, D and F, 2 draw notes. You shouldn't be going with the slide F, the blow F. That's changing slide position and breath direction. And we don't need to. So, however, if you're playing the major third interval between D flat and F, you should use the slide F. So we have 2 blow notes, same slide position. Pulls 1 and 2. D flat to F, major third. And then the same with between going F and A flat, a minor third interval. We should use the slide blow F to keep them both as blow notes. We should not changing breath direction and slide position. Why do that if you don't have to? So that's why it's good to have these under your lips and just be mentally aware of them and then practice these drills, get them under your lips. Whenever possible, we should strive to keep third intervals moving in the same breath direction and slide position. What about C sharp? This is always going to be a blow note, but we have to decide whether to use the upper or lower option. So C sharp is always a blow note. The slide is always in. It shows up at the bottom of the harmonica. But then on holes 4 and 5, we have two C sharps next to each other. When we're playing scales and thirds, it affects what we're doing. Because my goal is to try to keep the holes together. So if we play A to C sharp, we could skip a hole and go on up to hole 5. That would be okay, I think, if we were playing. That arpeggio involves a major third and a minor third. It's 2 third intervals stacked, which is one of the points coming up, is that practicing thirds gets you ready to practice arpeggios, because arpeggios are typically thirds, stacked thirds. So anyway, A to C sharp, let's keep the holes together and use the lower hole 4 C sharp. Conversely, if we have a C sharp going to E, the minor third interval, let's use the higher C sharp option, hole number 4. And this is one of the reasons why we practice these things ahead of time, so that we're not learning a song and going, which C sharp do I use? Kind of work it out ahead of time. So anyway, here's an example. Just moved up a hole. So I used the C sharp. This covers point number 6. Point number 6, sometimes both options for F, C, and C sharp are used in the same scale pattern. So continuing with this A major scale, I use the lower C sharp. And then here, I use the upper C sharp. This affects the key of D major also when playing scales and thirds. Lower C sharp, upper C sharp. So I have been learning how to play the harmonica lately. So I talk about some other places like the lower and upper C, like hole 4 and 5 C, in the harmonica tablature and notation that I provided in this blog post. I'm using 2 different C's in that exercise. So, and then right here, A to C. Because I want to keep the holes together. So I go holes 3 to 4 for A to C. And then that C is going to be hole 5 blow. So that's what I do. And then descending, I go E, E, C, and I use the upper C. And then I go D, B, and then C, A, I use the lower C. So in the same scale pattern, using 2 different options for blow C. Let's go on ahead to point number 7. There are 2 places where you will have to skip a hole to produce a major third. There are 2 places where you will have to skip a hole to produce a major third. I'll just tell you right now, I think it's valuable to know this and memorize it, but necessary for you to muscle memory it, not just memory it. So E flat to G is the most awkward major third, I think. We've got 2 different slide positions, skipping a hole, changing breath direction. But E flat to G involves a hole skip. And then B flat to D involves a whole skip. So when we play scales and thirds in the key of E flat, we got the awkward one, we got an easy one. We have, this brings me to point number 8. There are 2 places where a minor third is produced on the same whole. This is G to B flat. We're playing a minor third, but we're not moving. We just change breath direction and slide position, G to B flat. And that is affecting what I'm doing here with E flat, scales and thirds. That's a tough one. That's easy. That's a weird one because it's the same whole. That's a little awkward. We got to change breath direction. We don't have to change breath direction, but I like to keep the slide the same. So E flat to draw C. And then here we have another weird one. B flat to D, skipping a whole. Then we have an easy interval there, an easy third of C to E flat. If you ever encounter C to E flat, leave that slide in and keep them both draw notes, please. That's another easy interval is, we already discussed this one, D to F. So you can see those intervals start to repeat, and it's like, oh yeah, D to F. I already decided how I'm going to do that. But anyway, back to point 8, there are 2 places where a minor third is produced on the same whole. G to B flat, what's the other one? Bottom of the harmonica, there's no draw C. We got to play C as a blow note. And then to E flat. That's the one place. If you have a 16-hole harmonica, that'll be down an octave, but you have to play the minor third on one hole. There's no moving around. If you got a 14-hole, you could keep the C and the E flat as draw notes. So I do like my extra range of the 14-hole. I do need to get a 16-hole harmonica that's working, or repair the honer that I got. Let's go on to point number 9 and try to speed this up. I can't believe it's like 23 minutes already. Learning scales and thirds prepares you to learn to play triads and 7th chords off of each degree of the scale. Now, I said triads and 7th chords and 9th chords. So this is all like a 7th chord. This is a triad. We're just stacking thirds. If we continue to stack thirds, 7th chord, add another third, and that's a 9th chord. So these intervals are important as we start the discipline of playing arpeggios. 7th and 9th chord arpeggios. If we play root 3rd, 5th octave, that last interval is an interval of a 4th, not a 3rd. So let's do it in a different key. And usually that involves a whole skip, but we're just talking about thirds now, not fourths. Point number 10, the third interval can be played ascending, descending, and in various alternating combinations. So I have been playing, ascending thirds. You can flip that and play. Flip it around. And you can also alternate. You could go one up and one down. And so on. Or you could flip that around. Then you can also do 2 up, 2 down. You could do 2 down, 2 up. And so on. Point number 11, you can and should practice other types of diatonic scales and thirds, such as the Dorian, the natural minor, or the melodic minor scales. Then I said, this is true, but I would advise working hard on the major scales first. The minor tonalities will all eventually yield the same interval results. Like you're going to eventually come up with all these major, minor, third intervals off of every chromatic tone. You just got to learn them in a different order. You know what I mean? So eventually get to the minor scales. Point number 12, you can and should take baby steps with this. And so you don't have to do this in all the keys. You also don't have to do it off of every scale degree. In other words, you could go. That was demonstrating the first 3 and the first 4. And I did it in C and then D flat. That's just the first 4, I think. Yeah. That's the first 3, actually. You could do that exercise in multiple keys. That'll get you started with playing scales in thirds. Anyway, in this blog post, I encourage you, I'll have a link below. Please check it out. There is a PDF. You don't have to do anything to get the PDF. It's just going to be part of the blog post. You could download it. You could look at it, right on the website too. This PDF does not have harmonica tablature. It's just standard notation. It's just showing you the different options and ways that you can approach this. I've got the descending third intervals. I've got alternating, descending, ascending. I've got 2 up, 2 down. I got 4 up, 4 down. That was 4 up, and then 4 down, splitting the scale in half. Anyway, I hope this proves helpful. If you're interested in supporting, I'm putting a lot of free content on YouTube. If you want to support me on a monthly basis, I do have a Patreon channel now, and the subscription rate is super low. That will help support me on YouTube, and I'm also posting exclusive content. I've been getting a little chatty on the Patreon site, so my patrons are getting like extra stuff from me. And anyway,